Okay, I now am looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We need a roll call vote, I believe, because Armando's on the phone.
Yep. Director Bragman.
Aye.
Director Gibson.
Aye.
Director Kohler.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Director Quintero.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. This is now the moment for public expression on any item not on the agenda. Members of the public?
I actually have a public comment I wanted to make briefly.
Alrighty.
So I just wanted, and I hope you'll bear with me for about 60 seconds, but I wanted to see what the impact of single-payer healthcare would be on our agency, and managed to get some figures from staff about what we're paying for medical and 242 active employees. And we also pay dental, which is probably a little bit higher than some of the other agencies, but maybe not, I don't really know. But we're paying about $18,000 per employee, which is about $1,500 a month, which I can tell you from my experience in the private market before I was elected to the board is about average. So if there was a single payer with 7.5% employer withholding tax based on our 2020 salaries and wages of $26,942,959, we would be paying approximately $8,350 per employee. So that's a pretty marked savings of almost $10,000 per employee, which is about average. So it's the reason I made it is because there's been so much fear-mongering about it. I think for large public agencies like ours and other big employers, it's just we need to really look at the figures and look at the impact, because I think it could actually have a stimulus impact rather than the impact of withholding or reducing benefits. So that's it. Thank you.
So, because this item is not agendized, but I think we all have a big interest in it, can I request, Ben, that this be agendized, I think either for a board meeting or maybe a future finance committee meeting? I think it would be a great thing, thank you so much, for the staff to, and a benefit.
Does the board want to, get into the national discussion on single payer, which is, I think, what Director Bragman.
Maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were saying, Larry, that there were some options we should be exploring at this
yet.
point.
Not yet.
Not
No,
yet.
no.
Oh,
And
I see.
I'll send you my analysis.
Oh, okay.
So, no,
I misunderstood. I'm
it's
sorry.
it's a rough analysis. It's not audited. It's just based on 7.5% withholding.
You're right on. I mean, the problem is, of course, Blue Cross and Aetna and all those guys go out of business. But, it seems to me, though, that we need the same number of employees to deal with the paperwork. So they actually don't go out of business. They just work for somebody else, like us.
Maybe so.
Well, I mean, the overhead for Blue Cross is 30%.
We're not agendized on this. We have to be.
Let me just
okay.
finish.
Okay.
The overhead for Blue Cross is 30%. The overhead for Medicare is 3%. It's mechanical, right? I'm all for it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Any other public expression on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the January 23rd meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Director Bragman.
Aye.
Director Gibson.
Aye.
Director Kohler.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Director Quintero. Aye. Thank you.
Okay. That moves us to our monthly financial update, which seems to look pretty good.
All right, good morning, everybody. So this monthly financial update is as of January 2020. So we are about 58 point. No. I did. It just. Okay, here we go. So we are at 58.3% of the fiscal year. So our water revenue is at 60.
Did you get this?
I have it on my packet. Sorry.
So 64.6% is slightly higher, not because of the water consumption, but it's because the fixed revenue. They are right along, and water consumption is about flat. So you can see the graph a little later. So total operating revenue is at 65.5%, slightly higher than budget. fire flow fee, we receive about 50%. That's typically received in December, and we receive the other 50% around April. And capital revenue, so far we received about 7.5 million for CMF, and the others are mostly the customer project revenue. So we are at 62.2% at this time of the year, and we are right along the budget line. So if you see the so sales comparison compared to prior year fiscal 19 on a month-to-month basis as of January, you can see red graph is the current fiscal year. So you can see the this is in dollar, slightly higher, mostly due to the rate increase. And then if you compare the consumption, you can see the last 3 years, our consumption level has been flat. It's not increasing, and we expect this trend to continue. So on the expenditure-wise, our operating expense is right along the budget line, 57.2% overall. And then our capital expenditure is 37.2%, down at the bottom. 52.7% is overall total expenditure. So our capital expenditure is slightly lower than our budget. It's because mostly staff turnover in engineering, as well as large treatment plant project got dropped that was scheduled in our budget. So that's the main reason. Our fund balance is looking pretty healthy. So our operating fund balance, cash balance is about 30 million, which represent about 4 months of operating expenditure. And capital fund is about 22 million. Out of that, CMF is obviously 7.5 million, and we still have a 2017 bond balance about 8.5 million. Any questions on this one?
Any questions from the public on this issue? Okay.
Okay, I think that's the financial update.
Just, well, I guess I do have a question then.
Yes.
On our comparison, actual budget to actual, there's a number of percentages here for this time of year seem to jump out at me. Interest, for example, is a big one. Now, I realize that some of this is just a matter of timing, and it's hard to take this sheet and match it up to where we are at this moment in time. But because it's through January 31st, but just some of these that are a little bit insurance, including claims, for example,
So-
it jumps out.
So we
Why is
we
that?
pay annual premium right up front in July, so that's the reason. So that covers the whole fiscal year, but we
I
pay
see,
the premium
okay.
in upfront.
Right. How about the? I think it's interest income that looks almost 300%.
So we are doing fairly well, just as the stock market did pretty well. So LAIF, that's where we put most of our reserve fund, and that's been earning around 2% throughout the year. So it's
Okay.
been doing fairly well.
So that means, I gather, that as of January 31st, it sounds like we had underestimated what we might make in interest.
Yes.
Okay.
But then it might go down as
Well, it probably is if we
coronavirus
look
is
at-
hitting our market. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's unpredictable.
All right.
So I have a quick question, and it kind of goes ahead to the next item on the bond refinancing. So that indicated a savings a little over $500,000 a year. So when that kicks in, I assume in May, will that income or will that income or will that show as income or as a reduction of capital expenditures? So I'm just wondering how
It'll
the
show, I believe, is a reduction in debt payments.
Yes.
So it will be an offset to our operating budget of that amount. But for clarity, it doesn't go into effect until when, McYoung?
2022.
I see, okay. So
So- We haven't issued a bond yet, but however, we were able to lock the interest rate, premium,
see.
and all the other things with the Morgan Stanley.
so once it activates in 2022, that's when the interest rate
Yeah.
reduces.
Yeah.
I got you, okay.
So we can move on to the next item. So we are saying this as a soft close. The hard close will be happening in April 2022. That's when we will issue the bonds and we'll have actual bond. So on February 12, 2020, just a couple of weeks ago, we pre-sold all of the bonds we haven't issued yet to Morgan Stanley. Because of the market situation, we were able to realize a lot more than we expected. So we were anticipating about $450,000 annual saving. However, we now realize $538,000 annual cash flow due to the reduced debt service payment, as well as our, if you flip to page 2 of the staff report, you can see a little table. So our debt service level will also go down by 4.7 million because of the reduced interest rate as well as a premium that we'll be getting from Morgan Stanley.
Wow, that's great.
Yes, we were right at the good time.
So is that an immediate savings, or is it a refund to us?
No, it'll be actually reducing debt service.
I see, okay.
Yes. So there is no cash we are receiving from
Right.
Morgan Stanley, but we will reduce our debt service payment significantly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're buying out our old bonds.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions?
Any public questions? Yeah.
Roger Roberts. Good to see you again. Morgan Stanley, there's turmoil in the financial markets. There's various investment houses that are struggling. I don't think Morgan Stanley is in difficulty right now, but my question is, you're relying upon Morgan Stanley's ability to honor its obligation, and that's going to be a 20-year or so obligation. And so my question is, what if Morgan Stanley runs into financial difficulty of its own and cannot honor its commitments? How will that be handled?
So we have a bond purchase agreement. According to that, unless it's a natural disaster out of, I believe this is a fairly small amount of their portfolio on their fixed investments. So we are to pay to Morgan Stanley, not them to pay us. So in order for them to generate this total 70 million, I believe it's a fairly small amount of their portfolio, and we have a bond purchase agreement in case of their default. I think we have mitigated response that we have in the bond purchase agreement.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
We'll look into it more. You know, I think what Roger's talking about is the initial event. In other words, if they don't honor the initial event, then everything kind of falls away.
But there's an ongoing obligation on their part.
We're paying them.
No, we are.
They're just
paying them.
replacing our bond with their bond. They're, for some reason, Roger, which I don't understand, they're keeping all of their own bonds. They're just buying them. I guess they have the ability, they figure they can sell them to their customers. But right now, they're just purchasing the bonds. They're buying out our old bond and putting their bond in place. That's our understanding anyway, our
Yes.
great financial depth there.
If they hold the bonds and they run into financial difficulty, you're exposed. If they cannot lay them off, you're exposed.
I mean, I think we should get a further report on it because it seems to me like we are the obligor. We have to pay them.
Yes.
So it doesn't seem that we're relying on them, they're relying on us. So maybe we should get a further explanation.
Well, we'll look into this and bring this back
Yeah.
with details.
Thanks for raising it, Roger. Any other public comment on this item? Okay. Anything else, Meek Young, on this?
No, that's it. Any more questions?
That brings us to the communications update.
Good morning, board members. If you recall from the last meeting, there's a lot going on in communications, and at the top of that list, of course, is creating our new website. But before I get into the website update, I actually wanted to go over some of the other efforts we have ongoing. We talked about improving our outreach materials, among other things, so I just wanted to real quickly go through some of that before that. So what you see here is our customer newsletter. You probably have seen this particular edition. And as promised, we made some changes and updates. And this is the latest customer newsletter, which will be going into bills next month. As you can see, it's readable. It reflects the timing of spring with some relevant content. So we're really proud of that. And this was our internal employee newsletter. And for some reason, that was sent to employees by email in the form of a PDF. So we basically created a new employee newsletter that is an e-blast, an electronic newsletter. And this was that first edition. I think perhaps the most exciting change is the actual content improvements that we're trying to make. And I just wanted to show you a basic construction notice. This one is for the Ross Reservoir Landslide Project. That's the old version. And here's a look at the new one. This one is definitely user-friendly. It coordinates the different trail numbers so you can actually see the impact on the particular trail that you're interested in. So we really took the time to say, okay, what do people really want to know about this particular piece? So I just wanted to share that. So a quick update on our website. We're in the discovery and planning phase, and that includes taking a look at all of our data analytics. And what we're finding, not surprisingly, is that more and more users are going to the site with their smartphones. And that's really instructive as we create the new site architecture, of course. And the most popular functions that they're looking for, not surprising again, bill payment, starting and stopping service, fee adjustment forms, all of those things that are customer service friendly, right? But they're also coming to our site for things like the Water Watch page, our volunteer program, and the watershed. So part of this process includes looking at more than a dozen other water agency websites. And we're looking at the sites not to emulate them necessarily, but to just glean some best practices. So I wanted to go through some of that with you. I think I'm losing my voice. So this is Valley Water. And one of the things we liked about their site is how they aggregated district news and board agendas. And they actually created a microsite, which is something that we're looking at doing on our site as well, so that it's user-friendly.
What's a microsite?
It's basically an expanded landing page. So when you click on that district news module, it comes up as if it were a complete fresh page with images, ways to access the agenda, just clean and easy to use instead of just a bunch of links. And I think that's more inviting and more engaging. And so there's a lot going on here, but what we liked about this East Bay Mud site was the fact that they have all of these buttons here for users to get to the data that they're looking for most frequently. You see there they have bill payment, trail permits.
Some of us can't see the pointer.
Oh.
Just reference what you're pointing.
Okay, I'm sorry. So it's right here on the right side.
The discussion we had the other day.
It's right here on the right side.
You can just point me the right direction, too.
Staff does it a lot.
Can you point at this one?
Is this one better?
Well, that's what they're
In the
looking at.
meantime, just
They can't see that one, so.
Okay,
I was
Min
squinting.
and I
let
were
me try
just
this
talking
one.
about people point at the wrong screen. So.
Okay, thank you. So this one is actually a very clean website, as you can see. And what they did here was actually have a customer suggestion form right on the homepage, and we thought that was kind of unusual. And here's another look at Irvine Ranch. And if you look right here, this is actually a drop-down menu that brings forward all of those customer functions. That's not as common these days with the drop-down menu, but it was interesting to see how they approached their site. And here's a look at DC Water. And if you see right here, these are access buttons that are clearly optimized for mobile users. So when it stacks, it's really easy to get access to the data. Eastern Municipal Water District. This site, we really liked their bill payment system. This is a screenshot, but when you click into it, it's really clean and easy to use. And as we try to encourage more of our customers to do electronic bill pay, this is something that we're really paying attention to. Now this one is really busy, but again, you see the navigational buttons here on the side. Alameda County Water District. Their site is really similar to ours in the back end and the structure. It's a lot cleaner though, you see here, and they use the same basic aggregates here for residents, businesses, partners, and that's part of our site as well.
What are partners?
I was going to ask the same thing. Partners means different things to different people.
Right, so if you look at our site, it's like contractors and people who do business with the district, right? So this is Denver Water, and they actually have a really good customer-friendly site. If you look right up here, boom, you can manage your account, pay your bill, and this phone number, I mean, how many times do we go to a website looking for a number and you can't find it? They not only put it on their homepage, but they put it on all the subsequent landing pages, so it's always there if you have questions. And then we also like this piece right here for education and outreach and rebates and efficiency. It's hard to see that way. Okay, so just to talk a little bit more about the planning and discovery page. One of the things that we did with the developer is to come up with user personas or profiles. And really what that is taking a look at the kinds of customers who come to the site. So for example, we have Marin Mary, who comes to the site just to get water quality information, pay her bill, and wants to get in and out. Then we have Frugal Franny, who comes there to learn about rebates or how to save money on her bill. It's basically a way to capture the utility of the site. Part of that process included an internal review, and what we did was meet with more than 30 members of our staff through 14 meetings to kind of check our personas to see what kind of customers they are working with. Engineering, for example, has different needs than customer service or the watershed. So this was really designed to make sure that we were on track, but more importantly, to take a deep dive into the content that's on the site. So just yesterday, we began the site mapping process. So we'll be taking all of the data that we've gleaned thus far and really looking at the functional requirements of the website and what enhancements we can make. We're also looking at the site architecture, and what that will help us do is design a better path so there are fewer clicks to get to the information that people are looking for. And then this is probably the most challenging phase for us, content migration and testing. The last thing we want to do is have a beautiful new website and just move over the same old content. So we're really working hard to refine it, to improve it, and to make sure our digital assets, which are photos, videos, all of those components are perfect when the website launches. Part of that process, of course, includes a testing process, and we're going to invite the board to help us test out that beta site, and that way we can make improvements and refinements, because everybody uses a website differently, so we really want to get perspectives on how to make it better or the best that it can be. So I just wanted to circle back on a topic that we talked a little bit about at the last meeting, and that's the refresh of our visual identity. And that's important now as we move into this website development. I had the opportunity to meet with some board members, and I'm really grateful for the feedback. So hopefully with that feedback, we'll be able to integrate this identity into the site in a way that makes sense for everyone. So again, the goal is looking at ways to integrate Marin water into our website so that we connect with the broader audience and better reflect the mission, which is what we talked about. So some anticipated next steps. We're planning on working with a design team to refresh and enhance the existing logo and the word mark. Our legal team is working on securing the trademark, so thank you for that.
I thought we got an A+ on the logo the last time we had evaluated it.
Yeah, so this logo is going to be retained, but what we mean by refreshing it, so maybe the colors might be deepened a little bit or lines thinned out just to make it more contemporary. We're definitely keeping this logo. We love this logo. It's just a way to see if we can modernize it with the rest of the changes that we want to make to the word mark. But that's a very good question. Thank you. So in addition to that, we're going to be updating branding guidelines, of course, and templates to get ready to make those changes. And then looking at a developed phase-in approach so that it makes sense for the district, both economically and to the public as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
You know, my one thought, this isn't a question, it's a suggestion, but I'd maybe broaden your concept of partners from vendors to community partners. There's a lot of groups, some of them are represented here today, who are really invested in the district. So whether it's NGOs or, academics or, the baseball team that we sponsor. I mean, there's a lot of organizations that I think we consider partners, and we would like them to more consider themselves partners.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And in the new website, we're not certain that we're going to keep with those 3 categories because it's much broader than that. And we want to, I guess the main goal for us is finding the right navigational tools that'll tell our story.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you. Keep that in mind.
You may want to call it something like community partners. I mean, that's not really my world, but, really making the point that we are engaged. We are actively engaged.
Yes,
with,
absolutely.
With the community, with these groups, with these thought leaders.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I'd suggest also you take a stronger look at the Southern California water companies. You picked up a couple of them there, Irvine. Irvine Ranch is kind of a different animal than the other ones because of the Irvine company's involvement with Irvine Ranch. But, there's LA Water and Power. I think you should take a look at that, Orange County Water District. The reason I mentioned that is they serve a much larger constituency than we do. So they've had a lot more input on their, which may be positive or negative, but they've had the opportunity to expose their web pages to a lot more. I was just looking at DWP's webpage. It has that same resident business partner. So there's some logic to that that's, I don't know why that's what it is, but it looks like that's the direction things are going.
In some cases, it's built that way because of the back end. So Alameda County has the same Civic Plus back end as we do, and they have a certain format for their widgets, as they're called, on the bottom.
Yeah.
Eastern Municipal, which is in Southern California.
That's pretty small.
Yeah, their website is pretty nice,
Yeah, they're
pretty modern.
they're smaller than us.
Yeah, okay.
In Denver Water, I met the young woman that runs it. They have one of the finest I've seen. Their PR side of it, or whatever you want to call it, communication side.
It's
they
beautiful.
have a very strong,
Yeah, their website is actually very good, and I did talk to the director of communications there when we were looking at our website, and we have the same back end, which is a Drupal back end, and she said they were really happy with it. They were really happy with it, so that's encouraging.
On that line, have we hired Raftellus for that other work? They're doing our rate work. They're going to do our rate work. Or was it? There's something else they're doing for
The
us.
10-year plan we're doing.
10-year plan.
Yeah,
So the
so-
reason I mentioned Raftellus is because their comms person is Melissa Elliott, who did the website when she was at Denver Water.
Oh.
She is awesome. She's way smart. I think she had a lot to do with getting that. I would actually ask her personally for her. I mean, if we're working with them already, to see if she'd be willing to carve out a little bit of her time, because she's got incredible experience and an amazing eye.
Terrific.
We, the RFP will be going out soon for that,
Okay.
and we'll be making a selection and bringing it to the board.
Okay.
We have talked to Raftellus, and I've talked to her directly because she does bring a pretty unique
She does.
aspect to the notion of a financial plan and community input, because that's
Yeah,
It would be a nice team
it would.
because they have strong financial and the communication.
I didn't mean to jump the gun. I thought that decision had been made. But if we have the opportunity, so I wouldn't hire her separately, but if we have the opportunity to work with Raftellus, I would loop her in. For one thing, she'll be excited to do it. And separately, she's the incoming president for the American Water Works Association.
I think it's okay to hire her separately.
Well, I
Okay.
mean, she works for them. I'm saying I wouldn't do a separate contract.
No. Well, I think we should.
Oh,
You
well,
know,
okay.
if in the event they turn out not to be the selected one in this, I don't think that should stop us. I think we should
Yeah.
hire the eye. Although, you know, if she's coming president of AWA, that's a full-time job. So
She's both. She's full-time at Raftellus and
AWA is a full-time job because you have to go to all the state conventions. That's 50 travel trips a year.
she
you
is
know.
up to it.
Like any good consultant, but we did talk about that, were they to propose on our RFP, and she did make clear that she's going to find a way to carve out time to do work, and
Right.
this project did sound exciting to her.
Right.
But-
And by way of full disclosure, she's presenting at our event in Philadelphia in the spring.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Which I just signed up for.
So, just a question before we go to public comment.
Mm-hmm.
On the content migration, there actually is a lot of content on the website. I mean, there's thousands of documents.
Yes.
So when you say migrating content, does that include migrating that whole library of documents that are already there?
So it's kind of an extensive process. So for each page of the website, a grid is created, and then the content is analyzed to see if it's duplicated somewhere else on the site, if it makes sense where it is, or if it should be merged with another type of content or another page, and if the content is actually current and up to date, because in some cases it's outdated. So we look at that across the board and go all the way down and then begin the process of either merging it, creating new content, or finding a different way to enhance that page. It's quite a lot of documents. You're right, there are more than 10,000 pages on that website.
Oh, I would say that that's a low estimate, I think. So I'm just concerned about losing content, you know, and document retention. And I don't even know if we have a document retention policy.
We
But
do.
it's just something to think about. And the other thing is the search engine on the website. I mean, it works if you're patient, and I'm just wondering, is that sort of a standard widget that, you know, it's like Google search or whatever, or is that proprietary for whatever website mechanism we're going to be using?
So our search function, and we spent some time talking about that, will be so much better. And one of the reasons the current search function is poor, actually there are two main reasons. One is how all those documents are logged and keyworded and aggregated. And the second is that there's just too much out there. So when you're looking for something, you have to be ready to wade through it, right? That's what it feels like. So with the content migration, to answer your first question, there are several repositories for documents. So in analyzing where that document belongs, some of it frankly belongs on an intranet. So we talked about that for staff. Some of it definitely needs to be archived, and that's the beauty, for example, of having a dedicated board microsite. So we don't lose those documents. We have it archived, it's searchable, but it's nice and orderly so that people aren't overwhelmed by that.
It is, I think, as Jeannie's saying, trying to strike the right balance in terms of what does the public need, want on our website. Websites shouldn't necessarily be the document repository and for all historical documents. Yet there's certainly some documents you want a good history of, you know, financial reports and that sort of stuff. So what we're going to, and then the second question is, as kind of in parallel to, as we're thinking about policies and procedures, and we're going to talk about some of that on next Tuesday, the upgrade of those, our approach to document retention generally is something we're starting to think about and we'll be tackling. And That's another one that is striking the right balance. Many public agencies don't keep documents forever for a variety of reasons. Yet there's some you need to and some you should for good historical purposes. So when we tackle that, we'll be bringing our thoughts to the board because, documents mean a lot to an organization, but often to protect the organization in a lot of ways, you don't need to keep everything forever. And good organizations do have good retention policies that are adhered to.
That's why we have the 300 file cabinets out there, right?
Well, it's just concerning because I know for the courts, the document retention policy, they've installed or begun a pretty strict document retention policy at Marin Superior Court. And it's like, if you want to go back beyond 10 years, it's like, it's very difficult to do it.
Yeah.
And, some of the documents, the EIRs, board minutes, staff reports, they continue to have relevance beyond, what you might expect to use on a daily basis. So I just would like to strike a cautionary note about retaining documentation or thinking about it as we migrate into this new website. That's a bit of a concern.
I would just for clarity, and I think it's a good point, as part of the website process, we will not be getting rid of documents. They may not be all on the website as they are now, but we'll share with the board the approach, and we'll handle a document retention policy that is important for an organization like ours separately, and we'll be bringing that to the board as that gets developed.
Thanks a lot.
I thought with this scanning thing, I think we have it forever, don't we? Isn't that basically the idea, that we get rid of hard copy and keep it electronically?
I would just say many public agencies don't believe forever is in their best interest.
I follow that part, but technically, it seems to me that to be kind of arbitrary to erase something that is just stored on an electronic server somewhere. It's like,
Right.
I follow the logic, but I'm not sure I agree with it.
Forthcoming discussions before any decisions
works.
are made.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, for clarity's sake, the district does have a document retention policy. And the document retention policy that's been adopted by the board does set forth the format and the time for retaining things.
But I think that was probably envisioned in the hard copy days, i.e. the file cabinets sitting out here. So things have changed.
Yeah.
I think, that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I believe the last update was 2004, so several of the things on there are no longer used. I
Yeah,
completely agree.
we weren't scanning documents at least we weren't doing it as our primary storage mechanism.
Yeah.
That's like last year or the year before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to make sure your presentation is complete?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to see if there's questions from the audience.
For some of us in the public who are water district junkies,
And we love you.
I'm a neophyte when it comes to using the internet, and I don't want to get lost when I'm trying to search for something. So I would ask you to be really thorough and make it easy for people like me to use keywords to find things. And then when it comes to agendas and the like, assuming that they're prepared in a timely manner and that the public receives them in a timely manner, it would be very useful for us junkies if there would be a real easy way to take the information that is supplied associated with staff reports and agendas and maybe historical reference behind those, to be able to get in touch with staff before meetings to get clarification on things that are coming up, rather than to raise them in a public meeting when it may be too late to really get thorough response. So make it easy for people like me. I would really appreciate that. Thank you. And as for the keywords, there needs to be a sorting policy. So, because there may be, if you use a keyword, you may get 100 documents, but you don't need to see all 100.
Right.
So there needs to be a way of sorting that so that you're not overwhelmed when you use a keyword search engine. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And then Anne had a question.
Those are great comments, Roger. One question I have for you is, it's very common for companies to change their web pages, right? You know, you go on and you're used to using the old web page, and all of a sudden you come on without any warning, kaboom, it's changed to a completely different format. Some companies are allowing you to go back to the old one, and I'm wondering if you're giving thought to maintaining both sets of web pages, at least for a few years, so that people can use one or the other.
Actually, we'll have the old site sort of archived, but once the new site is using the existing URL, it would be very difficult to have the URL shift between the old and the new because it's one URL.
They do it with a toggle. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens all the time.
Yes,
There's-
I'd have to look into that because I'm not familiar.
Yeah,
Not familiar
I mean,
with someone going back to the old site.
There's several, they're more commercial web pages, people like National Rental Car and people like that, that change their formats and then they go back. They allow you to toggle back to the old one in case you don't want to deal with learning the new one. And I'm thinking particularly of you, Roger, in your comments, although I'm not pointing at you. It's just,
Just pointing at you.
you know, and I have a thought on your comment, Roger. It seems to me what would be logical to satisfy the needs of what Roger's asking is to include the email addresses of the staff who prepared the staff report on the staff report, so that you could just look at the staff report and then click to send an email, which I think would be more efficient than calling them, you know, at least to get their attention or whatever it is that you're wishing to do. But that would give you a quick, easy way to reference straight back to the individual who prepared the report.
It's probably a better idea than calling anyway.
I'd suggest to the board and the public that all items that come to the board come from the general manager, and that's probably the best starting point.
Oh, you're volunteering? Put your email address there?
You know, people tend to be able to find me pretty easily.
Where the buck stops.
But I think the original author, through the review process, you know, it does reflect being brought by the general manager.
However you do it, I think it would be wise to put an email address. I should have changed the wording,
Whichever is the
perhaps.
appropriate one.
Yes, put something there that has just click on this and you can send an email about this topic, and it carries in the subject line. It carries the name of the item, so that it automatically references that, and away you go. Sorry, Ann.
Oh, all right, okay. Ann Thomas, Corte Madera. Back to what you were talking about 10 minutes ago, the communications. First of all, I think your bill pay system is probably one of the best ones. I mean,
thank you.
click here, pay. But it's so efficient that when I get it, I click pay now. And I don't look at the newsletter. I have never looked at the newsletter. And I don't typically open PDFs online. And I wonder, first of all, do you have any way of assessing how many of the bill-paying people, your online people, actually do look at the newsletter? And I don't know that you can. I know you can sort of figure out how many people click and open the email, but I don't know about the PDF. And have you ever considered doing it as an e-blast to your email list, which would be all the emails that you have, such as, for example, Sonoma County Water Agency and now the North Bay Watershed Association has started, and I know they're considering whether it's worth the money. They started an online newsletter, which I thought was pretty good, and it just sort of comes in. It comes full. You don't have to open anything. It's right there, and it's like 2 sentences on each topic. And anyway, regarding the website, personally, I don't think what you do with the logos matters a hill of beans. I know people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their logos, but the one thing is, and I don't go to the website. That's why I prefer having something come to me. If I go to the website, just how to find what I'm looking for intuitively, and I know that's the problem, and
Partly because everybody's intuitions are different.
yeah, well, I know, but there are people who know what the general public, how the general public approaches this problem.
Exactly.
And-
And we do know that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 clicks to find what you need, and we're really working hard to improve that.
I think that if I'm looking for the Lagunitas tech, I want to be able to find it right away.
I see, absolutely, and we agree with you.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that I've noticed is that it's very common for the phone access, iPhone, smartphone access is different than the web page. And I understand there may be formatting issues or something, but I'd say that's probably true, in my experience, 80 to 90% of the time. It's a different web page. It's similar.
Yeah.
It's all the same information, but it's not in the same format. So you get used to looking at it a certain way, then you bring it up on your phone, and it's different. And maybe that has to be just because of it's too small a screen. But I think that you should leave that up to the user instead of up to feeding it to the user a certain way, giving it to them, forcing it down their throat, as opposed to saying, well, you find what you want.
Understood, yeah.
So,
Okay. Any other board or public questions on this item? Armando, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. Jeannie, thank you so much to you and your staff for the work you've done here. It's exciting to see where the website is headed. And the one question I have, do we use QR codes on our printed materials?
No, right now we don't use QR codes on our printed materials, and what we find is that increasingly that's being used less and less often, but we don't.
And the only reason I ask is at the university they're used a lot, but it's because we're in this cell phone world here, anyway, I was just asking about that. If they're not being used, I realize that that's also adds another level of maintenance that you may not need. So,
Thank
other than that, I
you.
agree with a lot of the comments that were made. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again, Jeannie, and to your team. And Carrie is going to give us the water efficiency program update and some proposed program modifications.
I sure am.
Welcome.
Good morning. Okay, Carrie Pollard, Water Efficiency Program Manager. So we're going to do an update this morning. We're going to cover 3 items, water efficiency program modifications. These are all proposed modifications, of course. Residential Gray Water Initiative and the AMI update. I'm going to start with this proposed modification. So here's the list. It's extensive, so I wanted to give you all a heads up that we've got a lot to run through, and I will go through each one of them independently. All these programs were evaluated by staff, evaluated current programs that are in place, and looked at new potential programs, revamping some of our programs just to make them more effective. So starting with the program modifications, the sunsetting programs. The 5x50 rebate program launched in 2014 in response to the drought. It was intended to be a limited time offer where $50 were provided for 5 specific widgets. So listed here, pool covers, laundry to landscape gray water components, hot water recirculation, rain barrels, and organic mulch. Participation in this program over the last 5 years has continued to decline, although we do acknowledge that there's a lot of potential here, and so some of these programs have been revamped, but we are recommending that this program be sunsetted, the 5x50 rebate program. Additionally, the toilet rebate program also launched in 2015, and it's provided rebates, $150 rebates, for fixtures that meet the 1.28 gallon per flush volume. Well, in 2016, the CEC changed the regulation to allow that required only 1.28s to be sold in California. So essentially, we're giving rebate money for not the most efficient fixtures on the market. In doing the analysis for this program, it was determined that the most cost-effective action on this program would be to end it and allow customers to make that choice on their own of which toilet they should be buying. So again, these are the two programs, 5x50 and toilet rebates, that we're proposing sunsetting.
Before you end, can I ask you a quick question about the toilet rebate program?
Sure.
Because we've had toilet rebates on and off for the last, I want to say 30 years probably. Do we have any sense, and I realize you're still relatively new with us, about what our saturation rate has been for high efficiency toilet conversions?
I have not yet to find a saturation study that's been done by the district, but the California Water Efficiency Partnership has done some analysis around statewide saturation.
Right.
And there's still some potential, but as regulations continue to ratchet
Yeah.
down and as fixture standards continue, the performance of fixture standards continue to evolve and
Yeah.
increase, that performance standard will continue to be ratcheted down. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to continue
Oh,
offering.
no,
the
I'm
funding
agreeing
in
with
that.
with the
Yeah.
recommendation, definitely. I was just wondering if we have a sense of where we are district-wide. And I think what you're saying is, it doesn't really matter because you really can only buy, at this point,
You're
water
absolutely
efficient
right.
toilets. So there's no
Yes.
point in our putting the,
Funding there.
Didn't we include some kind of, excuse me, if toilet efficiency mandate for that Tier 3, Tier 4?
Tier 4 exemption, we did, yes. And so that is included in the Tier 4 exemption. I'd say 1.1 gallon per flush toilets, and which is maximizing the efficiency of toilet fixtures. You can actually get them down to 0.8 gallon per flush, so they are available. But when you do the analysis of the water savings potential from going from a 1.28 down to a 1.1, it's just really not cost effective for us to
What about
invest in.
going to a 0.08 or 0.8?
A 0.8, well, there's a limited number of fixtures on the market
Yeah.
that are at that low level. There's a handful, there's probably only about 12, which is enough to have them readily available, but not necessarily enough to say, here's an incentive that's not focused on one particular manufacturer.
I'm just putting out there maybe whether we should consider continuing the rebate for the super high efficiency. So just something to think about, because, you know, that would be sort of an extraordinary step for folks to take. So, just something to think about, okay?
Thank you. So now we're going to jump into the new incentive programs. So there are 7 of them, so bear with me. Laundry to landscape gray water kits. So this would be offering, I think it was mentioned at one of our prior board meetings, the idea of having workshops and training for folks who are interested in installing gray water systems. This would be working with local distributors, for example, Urban Farmer or Daily Axe, to offer 90-minute sessions to educate the customers on, you know, how to get through those barriers of installing a gray water system. Whether they do it themselves or they hire someone else, it's important they understand the maintenance and the process and how really it functions. Additionally, they would be able to get a subsidized kit for doing that installation in their home. It's approximately $100 per kit for this program. Moving on to the watershed approach to landscaping, garden support. So in 2018, the district published the watershed.
Can you back
Yeah.
up a little bit? The $100 is the cost to the consumer,
The $100 is the cost to the district.
to the district.
so we'd be giving them the kits.
Giving them, great, that's what I wanted to hear. Okay.
The Watershed Approach to Landscaping book was published in 2018, and this is Best Management Principles for Sustainable Landscapes. It's a really great book, and we are encouraging customers to utilize the principles there, and we thought it would be great to offer an opportunity for community organizations to install demonstration gardens that demonstrate these principles, that show folks how these principles work and what they look like, and that they are doable on their own, within their own landscapes. So this would be a $5,000 support grant for these gardens. We would limit it to 3 this current fiscal year and then 4 the next fiscal year, so that we can really continue to do that evaluation of, are they being maintained? How are they being installed? Is the signage appropriate? And all those things are checks that we will be reviewing with the applicant, but we want to make sure that as the program rolls out, that it continues to be useful for our customers and in locations that make sense across the district.
I love that approach, that kind of figuring it out and iterative approach. The funding available seems low. $5,000 seems like a very tiny amount of money to do this.
It's
Having done
Yeah, so-
gardening in my own little tiny
So,
space.
so these are expensive. Often,
Yeah.
community gardens can pull together multiple grants, and this would add to it. This is, I don't think it's necessarily replacing turf, for example. So it's not having a direct water savings. It's intended to, broaden our messaging in terms of.
Right.
So I think in terms of, I think it's a fair point. I think these will continue to get reports from Carrie in terms of the uptake, the feedback from folks. Does it support folks that would be doing it anyway? Often it's a city or something like that that does plan to beautify some area, and this would just help them just move the program forward. It's not intended to
100% of the
necessarily.
funding.
Right.
So I'd like to see this come back with the funding doubled, though, because this is a really small amount of money. And I totally hear what you're saying, Ben, but I mean, if you're going to have impact, and the whole point, I mean, this is really kind of the marriage between comms and efficiency at this point, because that's what this is. This is the demonstration. But I mean, if you're going to have impact, you need the funds. And maybe I'm overly sensitive coming from the nonprofit space, but if you're spending all your time running around trying to get another if you need like 8 $5,000 grants to get you where you need to go, you're not going to get there. And I mean, this is a really small amount of money. So I think we should be able to do a little bit more. This isn't going to be 100% of the cost for anybody doing this. It's going to barely be 10% of I don't know, maybe 20% of the cost.
Sure. So the feedback that we've received from community organizations is they have designers who donate their time. They have material donations. They've got a lot of pieces coming in.
Sure.
Our $5,000 investment is really to help ensure that the principles that they're promoting align with our book, essentially, right? Like, so we have a clear demonstration. They're looking at doing a beautification, a garden. So this is really just to help push them towards things that we support. And I think we can evaluate whether or not it makes sense, and whether or not it's enough of an investment to help move the, kind of get them over the line,
Right.
in engaging in the principles that we support.
Again, I'm in favor of aggregating donations and volunteerism, but I also know that when things are being volunteered, there's issues and there's time delays, and it's just, you just don't want to. If you're going to do it, we should do it, is all I'm saying.
Thank you. The next three we'll start with rain barrels and cistern rebates. So as mentioned, 5x50, we had a $50 rebate for rain barrels. We're really looking at expanding this program to, instead of having it set at $50 regardless of the size of the rain barrel or cistern, moving to a 50 cent per gallon with a $1,000 maximum. What we found during the analysis of this historic program was that many systems were at the 100-gallon level. So it's still $50, right? But would really encourage should help encourage folks to go look at larger systems and have more of a beneficial impact. And so again, we'll continue to evaluate those because we do capture what size is the rain barrel going in and all of that level of information, so we can determine if we're moving the mark the way that we intend.
Have you
Th-
interviewed?
this, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to add in. I didn't. This is. I found this one kind of a creative enhancement to our program where it's scalable, and all of these. Really, aside from the garden one, which is more of a unique communications piece, all of these, there was really a fair amount the board doesn't see of backup analysis that Carrie and her staff did on the return from the investment in terms of the cost of water and comparing it to other costs of water for us. So I just wanted to share that with the board, that this, a lot of effort and robustness went into this and really trying to keep the rebates in line with the cost of our water and the value of water.
I mean, I think it's an excellent idea to scale it up, and it's amazing, really, how much water you can get off your roof. I mean, we fill up 1,000-gallon container with maybe 2 good rains. So, and then I'm jumping ahead a little bit on the gray water. I mean, I would also think in some of these instances where folks are not putting in gray water, that we maybe have an alternative, that if they're not going to do gray water, they do rainwater, So it's sort of they're both going into the landscape. And it's just like, I mean, we can talk about it further when you get to the gray water thing, but.
Very good, thank you.
On the rain barrels, have you done any follow-up with people who've already done this? I ask because I have an acquaintance who spent, I mean, I think she used part of a rebate that we had at some point, but it's been a very unhappy experience. Yes, I know. I'm sure that's not the case across the board, but it just made me think it would be a good thing to be following up with people who have taken advantage of these opportunities in the past to like really understand how is it working on the ground. Sure. I have a similar sad story on gray water. Again, these things shouldn't discourage us, but I just want to be aware so that we can address.
You know, to be honest, I've not that I'm aware of. I know that we used to do, Jeannie probably doesn't know either, since we're both so new. We used to do customer surveys associated with rebates, and I don't know if the rain barrels were part of that.
Okay.
I will certainly look into it, and I would love to hear the story at some other point so I have a better understanding.
I just think it should be done.
Yeah.
Like when you come back to the board with this. So I would like this to not be a consent item. I think this should be, so I'm getting ahead of myself. I think this should be a board item because I think the public's going to be interested. But I do think that if you could do some, to the extent that it's not, you know, overly onerous, I think some, at least spot checking with some people about how it's working for them. Because I think for the program to work, we need to learn from what we've already done. Okay.
And just one other unintended consequence on some of the large rain barrel installations, the district requires backflow installation, backflow valve installation. So it's just, you know, it's one of these little unintended consequences which really gets people upset.
So that was part of the unhappy
Yeah.
experience, yes.
Yes, we have discussed that amongst staff, and it's on our radar.
Great.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, good.
Okay, moving on. Laundry to landscape, landscape your lawn, all these L and Ls. Incentive program, it's under development, and so we're looking at encouraging folks to take out their lawn and put in low water use landscaping. As referenced in the staff report, we're looking at two options currently, and I just wanted to bring them both before you because they're both on the table. First would be your standard turf rebate, like what many refer to as cash for grass. It would be a 50-cent rebate, very straightforward. We wouldn't look at how people remove their lawn or what they're necessarily installing. It would be really just 50 cents per square foot to get them to take their lawn out. The other option is more of a sustainable landscape, encouraging sustainable landscape practices through a sheet mulching process. So it would be providing landscape materials, so cardboard, compost, mulch, a drip irrigation conversion kit, and a handful of plants, similar to what City of Petaluma does through their Mulch Madness program. And it would be delivered. It would be more of a providing that materials for customers and encouraging them to not cut their lawn out, but actually keep the healthy soils in place and build those soils up for their new landscaping. Current analysis, it's landing at about 35 cents a square foot, so it's actually more cost effective for the district, although it is more staff time, and we're really we're working on finding a distributor that can handle all those materials, so we don't have to contract with a bunch of different folks to provide those materials to the customer. So it's really still being analyzed, but I did want to bring it before you today. One, to get your input, but also let you know that is something that we are considering and look forward to moving forward on.
So 2 quick things. I love the 2 options. I think that's a fantastic way to serve the community because you're absolutely right. Different people want to do different things. 50 cents a square foot sounds really low. I mean, they're up to $4 in LA, and I realize this isn't LA, but it seems really low. And my other question is, for either one, do you anticipate some kind of contract that will ensure that the investment has the intended result because they're agreeing to some kind of maintenance schedule that's on their dime?
Yeah, so the rebate amount was selected based on cost effectiveness for our cost of water, and so as Ben mentioned.
I assume that's cost effectiveness based on you taking this out of rate revenues instead of capital. The cost effectiveness would be very different if we were taking this out of capital, which we have discussed. So I would like that option to come back because the cost effectiveness would be completely different if you're amortizing this over 20 years.
Well, now that we're mostly cash-funded capital, but we'll take a look at it. I
Okay.
don't know, Cynthia, that it really will materially change.
Okay.
But let us take a look at that.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to say, I really like the idea of just delivering the material and coming back and checking on it, and to make sure that it's been installed, you know, because once that's done, if that's checked, almost takes care of itself, you know. So
The maintenance piece is important. So I agree. So that's basically what I was getting at when I said, is there kind of some kind of contract? We're not just giving them the cash. I mean, obviously there has to be an agreement where they are bound to do what they say they're going to do. But then beyond that, are you considering some sort of, not a maintenance contract, but some kind of, will the agreement, whatever that is with the landowner, have some kind of ongoing requirement?
I think their neighbors would take care of some of that. And so we'll continue to look at terms and conditions that other utilities use to ensure that the landscape is maintained. And I'm not sure if it's within our authority.
On the 50 cents or whatever it would be per square foot, that's only paid once they complete the work.
They
So
they have to turn in the.
you have to make
receipt.
sure that the work is done, and of course, the delivery of material, you know, will be ensuring that's used as well. I think it's an interesting question, Director Kohler, in terms of what if in 5 years they revert and put in turf, something like
Or
that.
it just all goes to pot? I mean, that's the other problem.
Right. But our concern would be the high water demand of turf.
Right.
And we can look and see how other agencies deal with that. You know, you do get into an enforcement. It's actually one interesting place that AMI could help alert us, where all of a sudden, boom, they're back to a seasonal high demand. But it's an interesting question.
Probably don't need AMI for that. I mean,
Right,
the bill
exactly.
will do
Right,
that same
right,
effect.
Right.
Exactly.
It seems to me it would be a good thing, too, to talk to Marin Catholic, being they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, installation of artificial turf in southern Marin. And I haven't heard any rumbles about any problems they've incurred. I remember this sad situation with Bill Rothman when my wife was the president of Reunion School Board, and we had it done deal to convert all their schools over to artificial turf until Rothman showed up and started whining about benzene in the crumb rubber. And it's interesting that the biggest value, which is not water, is no more broken ankles.
Yep.
Yeah, getting rid of the gopher holes.
Yeah, I think that, so the way the program's currently designed, artificial turf would not be eligible for either of these rebates, acknowledging the sustainable landscape practices we're encouraging, building healthy soils, nutrients. Oftentimes,
square foot? What's it for?
the 50 cents a square foot is for removing your lawn and putting in
see.
low water use landscaping.
Right.
Debatable on that issue.
And as far as enforcement mechanisms, I mean, you know this better than almost anybody on the planet, but I mean, they range pretty dramatically from, you know, Southern Nevada literally puts a lien on property. I'm recommending against that. But I mean, that's the extreme way to go in terms of you know, this has to happen, all the way to we're just giving you your cash and that's it, we're done.
mean,
So I
I'm not-
think we can find a reasonable middle ground in a contract context that establishes some responsibilities. How and whether we enforce that is a different thing. But my experience is that, you know, just the act of engaging the landowner in the process of, you know, you are agreeing to do this makes it much more likely that they will in fact do it.
Also through setting standards of percentage of replanting, right? So if you have other plants planted, it makes more competition for the weeds to come up, and there's there's ways we can work through it, which is part of the analysis of looking at other program designs. So.
And again,
Appreciate that.
delivering the material seems to be a pretty good way of encouraging people to actually follow through, I think, so.
Moving on to closed washer rebate. So the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership launched or has had in place a regional program offering rebates for Energy Star most efficient models. The district has had a long history of offering closed washer rebates. Closed washers are unique in that Energy Star most efficient continues to move the bar, meaning they don't just set a standard like CEC does for toilets, and that's that for the next 10 years or so. Every year they're reevaluating what are the most efficient models, what are the range of models that are available, and our proposal is to offer a $100 rebate for those most efficient models. Another final, the last two. We're wrapping it up.
Just ask you about that
Oh, yeah,
because
sure.
isn't the point of this chart that people aren't really doing it anymore? And you're talking about,
Those washers.
yeah, it looks like we were successful. We got, I mean, not hugely successful, but 480 something in 14, and we're down to 64 last year. So
Yeah. So it was a discussion that staff absolutely had, and it was kind of on the fence when looking at the cost effectiveness. This is one of the most cost effective programs we offer, and it's because of how much more efficient those introduced our most efficient
I think we
washers
should
are.
offer it. I'm just saying I don't think $100 is enough, but given the difference in the price of these machines.
Okay.
So I think this goes back to, again, how do you determine cost effectiveness? And I think we are having a friendly debate about that internally. But it doesn't seem to me, given the savings over time, especially since we're putting all the money in up front, that we are really looking as clearly as we might about the benefit to the district from a financial perspective.
So some of this is interesting because it is moving in the direction of high efficiency toilets. When you look, we weren't looking for a washer, but we were in a place that had washers, had, I don't know, 12 to 15 high efficiency side loaders and one top loader. And those are the inefficient old models. So I think you do want to be thoughtful as an agency. Are you giving money to someone whose top loading washer has broken, and they'll be buying a side loader because really that's almost all that's available, and how much do you want to subsidize that purchase? So that's kind of why it was on the bubble too, and it's all part of the calculus that went into these numbers.
So, I mean, it's been a little while since I bought a washing machine, but I mean, it was only a few years ago. I mean, we bought the high efficiency one just because that's what we were going to do. But I mean, it was much more expensive than the low efficiency ones. I mean, are you saying this
3
is
times.
like?
Right.
I'm sorry?
3 times.
Yeah.
3 times
So
the price.
I think I'm confused. I mean, you seem to be saying that this is just like toilets where the market is basically driving it. I don't think we're there yet.
Which is why this is still being proposed. I'm just suggesting the number and the demand seems to be more and more on the side loading washers. And I was just sharing a data point I had of a couple of weekends ago when I went, and it was all these side loaders and one top loader at Friedman's Appliances. And I happened to be there for a kitchen, but I migrated over. That was where the free beer was, so I found myself over there.
So our anecdotal experiences are very different. I had to wrestle my spouse to the ground to spend another, I think it was almost $600 to get the energy efficient model.
At least double the price.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because we're just replacing units. In fact, this weekend in a unit in Roner Park, and we're going with a top load washer because it was an LG that was just as efficient as the side load. So, I think maybe there's been some changes there.
To the top loader.
Yeah. And we found from our experience with rentals that it's just better. Top loaders are better for the rental side of it. Less maintenance, less problems. Just FYI.
I just think the decline
We'll take
in
a
the
look
use
at
of
the
the rebates
costs.
is a fairly strong indication that we're not offering enough of a rebate.
Well, or we saturate the market too. I mean,
We clearly have not done that.
well, we made a dent. And are we still working with PG&E?
No,
that-
PG has been out of the washer business for a while.
Oh, because that was so slick
That was
before.
slick.
Yeah, you just did it all at once with them. Maybe that's a precursor to their bankruptcy, huh?
You may want to see if CalWeb's got some saturation numbers because I don't think we're even remotely close to saturation on washers.
And also pull cost of washers because just because it's a top loader doesn't mean it qualifies for a rebate. These are the most efficient models, and
right.
so they're a handful of them. So we'll pull those numbers as well as
We haven't saturated the market. Why is there such a dramatic?
Because we're not offering enough money. The difference in
But
price
are
is
we-
very high.
People won't spend the money to buy the
Is
high
that
efficiency.
difference any different now than it was in 2014?
Well, one thing, I did ask that question, and Carrie looked back. There was a more aggressive outreach
There was,
program
when we
during
first
the
did it.
drought, and that has tailored off, so that would be probably part of the answer.
so we can increase marketing. Also being
The
part
drought
of
that's back, you mean?
being part of the regional program allows the partnership to do
Okay.
the mass marketing region-wide. So it's not just us two in our service area. It allows it for someone going to Friedman's outside of our service area, has the awareness of rebates that are being offered here. So it kind of allows us to
He
broaden that
lives in
outreach.
East Bay, that's why.
Okay, moving on. Smart irrigation controllers. So this is a good one to think about as you think back about the landscape your lawn idea and how we'll know whether or not they're maintaining it in water use. Okay, so this is an incentive offering smart irrigation controllers for WaterSense certified irrigation controllers, smart irrigation controllers. It'd be a $100 rebate, and any WaterSense certified controller would qualify for this $100 rebate. Subsequently, there's a regional program through the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership working with Ratio, doing a point of purchase incentive for also $100. And Ratio is innovative in that it's smart home technology. So you can pull out your phone, much like your AMI system, right? You can pull out your phone and say, when is my irrigation going to turn on? When did it turn on? What are the settings? Should I delay it? It's raining. All of those details are available. Additionally, because it's all cloud-based, we have access to that information as well, not necessarily when any particular person irrigates, but more to their default. So the time of irrigation. So if we have a pressure zone that has high demand that we need to adjust, we can tweak start times. We can also give them some more push out additional information on landscape plant material type. So is it cold season turf, warm season turf, et cetera. That allows us additional insight on water use patterns. This is primarily focused on residential and small commercial. These are smaller irrigation controllers. They can't handle 24 plus valves. But it's a great opportunity for us to do simultaneous incentives and establish do some analysis on which type of customer is driven to which type of rebate model and when and why potentially. So there's that one. And finally, the sustain reduction rebate, which is also currently under development. So this would be a future incentive for non-residential customers to implement any water-saving initiative, widget, et cetera, that they can prove the savings from. Meaning, say there's a commercial laundromat or a hotel that does a lot of laundry. They come to us and say, we have this new technology, it'll save us a bunch of water, here's the analysis. We can evaluate that and determine whether or not it's something we want to invest in, especially if we see the water savings are justifiable. Potentially they'd get a 50% rebate up front to help with that initial capital of doing the change, and then after 12 months of evaluating the long-term savings, they could receive the additional funding. We don't currently have a customer coming to us with a widget or a technology, but what we want to do is start talking to customers about this as a potential opportunity. We really want to encourage innovation and not be tied to a widget-based rebate. And so, of course, when we do find someone that comes to us that says, hey, I've got a cooling tower that I want to retrofit, increase the cycles of concentration, and here's the water savings, we will bring that back to the board for your consideration and approval. But we certainly want to start talking to customers about this opportunity.
It's quite an interesting concept, this program. There's some work to do to take shape, and we'll bring back it conceptually to the board. I just wanted to share kind of a challenge from my view is we're potentially looking at very significant subsidies in this, and we'd want to make sure that we wouldn't be exposing the district to a business that goes out of business in 2 years, and we did a 20-year payback. Those sorts of things
Right,
from
right.
a responsibility of public dollars. So there is some work for us to do, and we'll bring it back. But the concept is obviously quite intriguing.
I'm super excited about this concept, and I just want to congratulate you and Ben and the rest of the team for developing it. I'm looking forward to what you come up with.
Yeah, I am
It's a great
too.
idea.
There's 2 large developments in San Rafael. You might want to reach out to them. There's Marin is doing a big new development on 3rd, and then there's a hotel that's going to go in on 5th and D. So they're both large holes in the ground right now. So.
All right, great, thank you. And so that's the extent of the program modifications that I'm proposing. I'm going to move on to the other 2 updates this time. So starting with the Residential Gray Water Initiative. So in December of 2019, the water efficiency staff took on the oversight of the gray water compliance, which is Ordinance 429, which requires that all new and upsized service connections install a gray water system. In doing some analysis, since about October of 2018, over 300 connections would have triggered this requirement. Only 22 actually installed gray water systems. We acknowledge that that's not, it's not meeting the intent of the ordinance. And so what we're proposing is convening a blue ribbon panel focused on residential gray water systems, really looking at the model that SFPUC used with establishing their large multifamily non-potable water system. So it's high rises, right? Multifamily homes, large businesses,
campuses.
mixed use, that kind of, which is a great model for them, right? But that doesn't really align with our service area. And so we want to take the work that they've done and look at using a similar model, look at expertise within the realm and come up with some additional recommendations and of course bring them back to the board for your review and consideration.
This is a super cool idea, and I want to talk to you more offline about it. But one quick question. I mean, that was like a 4 or 5 year process. I mean, I don't know that you're looking at something quite that extensive. They also brought in other utilities. Are you thinking about doing that?
Yeah, so we want to look at health departments. So if our local health department doesn't want to engage, there's other opportunities. I think we'd pull in someone from like San Francisco or LADWP who has written extensive ordinances.
We'll definitely go local first, though.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're going to go local first,
Yeah.
and then building officials, the same deal. Local installers,
Okay.
experts to provide feedback and really help us get to the point where on-site reuse is something that's not just deemed not feasible within our service area.
Could I just add one comment about that? Because when the ordinance first passed, there were a number of applicants that did claim it was not feasible. And when we talked to them, there was actually a multi-unit development on Tamil Vista, just that way south of here. And, they had an engineer saying it's not feasible. Well, it actually was feasible. So I'm just wondering what our criteria is, or if there's a process for feasibility, because I don't think the applicant should just be able to say it's not feasible without staff review.
Well, I think that's part of what you're coming up with is what constitutes feasible and what doesn't. Like, I think the idea is to have this standard, a set of standards.
I think that's right. Through this effort is to take a step back and say, how do we build on gray water opportunities? At the same time, how do we address some of the issues that are in our current ordinance as well and bring back a broad-based approach going forward that's been tested a bit and really has delved into some of those challenges you've mentioned, because we all agree with the current ordinance was a great first step, and we've learned a lot from it. And what you're saying, that's one thing we've learned from it. For sure.
Yeah. No, I just think that process does need to get refined, because a lot of people are going to say it's not feasible because they just don't want to do it, and it needs to be kind of baked in to development standards.
Yep. So this is, again, a point where I'm going to say I think doing some outreach to people who have done, especially residential gray water, because that will be most of it. So a colleague of mine had a very sad experience where their gray water system was working well for 3 or 4 years, and then it's always when you're on vacation, and something went sideways, and it was a terrible flood in their house, extensive damage, on, and they're like, never again. So, I mean, you can't avoid everything, but I think it is useful to talk to people that have had both very positive and then problematic experiences, so that can be worked into your blue ribbon panel's considerations.
Absolutely. Thank you. Moving on, finally, AMI update. So phase 1 started in 2018, where we installed over 1,900 meters using $1 million of IRWIMP grant funding. This was part of the drought round funding. Phase 2 is currently underway. We're looking at installing 1,980 meters. We've got about 700 in the ground as of this week. And that's $781,000 in IRWIMP grant funding as well for 2015 round. So there's a number of different rounds of IRWIMP funding, as you may recall. And finally, we just heard word that we will be able to receive funding for phase 3, which will be another 860 meters.
Is that also IRWIMP?
also IRWIMP, if you notice, it's also drought round funding. So phase 1 and phase 3 are coming from the same bucket of funds. We're able to leverage our friends in the Bay Area's inability
Nice.
to spend all their money, and we were ready to move forward on it, and so
That's
we can get
great.
additional $350,000. This phase 3 agreement with Badger Meter will be coming back to the board very soon for your consideration, so that we can continue moving to spend these funds within the timeframe of the grant.
So you're probably dialed into the Water Smart program. So they just came out like this week. I don't know if you saw that with their funding for this year, and like I don't know, 70% of it was for AMI, which I haven't seen before. So
It's a bureau contractors have the best pull at Water Smart funding. It's
No.
especially for
We were-
AMI.
we work with a bunch of cities that are not bureau contractors at all, because the WEAGs are for the smaller. Where we would fit into the small communities, But I'm just wondering if this money, because it's state money, because they always want to match. Anyway, we can talk offline about it.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
But
as
they're
well.
giving really big dollars. For communities like, Thornton, Colorado is much smaller than we are, and they just got 1.5 million for AMI. The main thing is that they had to come up with a 50% match.
And finally, we are developing a feasibility study to evaluate the long-term approach for district-wide implementation of AMI. This is, of course, one of our strategic plan initiatives, and I just want to make sure that you're aware that we are continuing to move forward on that.
Okay.
And
I have a question.
yes,
Do all of my fellow board members have AMI on their house?
Yes?
No?
No.
I do.
Yeah, I do. I end up showing people that software all the time because just very few people are aware of the real-time info that you can get on your phone. It's obviously really important. But thanks for this work, Carrie.
sure thing.
As you might recall, Armando, I was in France and we picked up a problem with our irrigation system and had the gardener address it from France when we weren't even there because of the AMI.
And with that, I'll turn it back over to the board for any additional questions.
Well, that was very interesting, but I don't exactly understand why it's in the Finance Committee.
Yeah, that's been crossing my mind for a while.
I think because there's a budget piece attached to it.
I think it's a stretch. It's never been in the finance before, and usually it's done at a board meeting. So
We will be bringing it to a board meeting. It was originally planned, as was communications for the communications
that's my
committee,
fault.
and there was
I
there was a
didn't
hiccup
attend.
there.
Yeah.
But that's generally where we try and bring conservation items.
I
Yeah.
couldn't attend that meeting, that's why.
I understand. I think it's not a good thing to blend these, though, because I don't think it blends that well. Because the audience that comes doesn't necessarily, it's not the same audience. We may have different people that would come if it were done in a board meeting or in a doc meeting, which is the more historical place. It seems to me it's always been done in a board meeting with an annual update on this program, I think. But that's, only 15 years of memory, so it's hard to know if it's exactly right.
The
Well, it's gonna
conservation
come
piece
back.
has been spotty, and that's going to change now that Carrie's here.
It's going to come back to a regular board
Yeah.
meeting too, so we'll get another shot at it.
Cool.
Okay.
Roger.
Roger.
Roger Roberts again. Two things. I wonder if the water district, let me go back. There's about a 7% turnover in residential properties over time in the county. And does the water district, at the time of sale, do an inspection and make recommendations associated with how to achieve greater water efficiency? It may be a way of finding some people that would be willing to spend the money as part of the exercises. I'm not proposing necessarily that you require that they do that, although that's another option, that they, at point of sale, that there be water efficiency analysis, and you could even go so far as to say that they must actually execute those.
Tiburon does. We sold a house there, and we had to. There's an inspection from the city that comes in and says, this toilet's got to go, this toilet's got to go, that toilet's got to go, and so forth. So there are at least some of the cities doing that.
Yeah, well, I just raised that issue. On gray water, it's my understanding, perhaps I'm incorrect, that the major cost associated with putting in gray water is putting in state-of-the-art backflow control. If that is the most expensive part of putting in a gray water system, you may want to consider having rebate associated with putting in backflow control and doing it in the highest and most efficient and most effective and least problematic way. So I just raise that as a possibility.
Yeah, the real hooker
Really good point.
on that side, Roger, is the device costs $150, and it costs $100 a year at least to have it tested. So, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Could I just say something? The laundry to landscape system we have diverts the rinse water from the sanitary sewer to a pipe that goes out to mulch fields. So there's no backflow involved for gray water. And we'll see. Ours is about 2 or 3 years old. I know you have to redo the mulch. There is some maintenance, but it's a pretty simple system.
Oh, the colleagues that I have definitely had to put in a backflow device. So I think it depends on your particular situation.
I do. I think if it ties into your irrigation system,
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
that's
Which
right.
is how it's working for a lot of people.
And I'll just add that there's state legislation requiring upon sale. So that would be why Tiburon does the inspection.
I don't think Tiburon's the only one. I just
No,
happen to know about that one.
Statewide, statewide ledge.
Yeah. Armando, did you have a comment on this item? Okay. Any other public comments on this item? Okay. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Great job.
We're looking forward to this coming back to the full board. And I think we are going to item 6, which is the purchase of heavy equipment, a bunch of stuff. Who's got this item?
Good morning, Darren Machado,
Darren.
Superintendent of System Maintenance and Support Services.
Thanks.
I'm here to discuss the purchase of a new Caterpillar 315F excavator that will replace
Okay.
one of our excavators assigned to the watershed. The excavator being replaced, VE 379, is approximately 15 years old with over 4,600 run hours. The fair market value for this excavator is estimated to be between $30,000 and $50,000. Staff has budgeted funds in the Automotive Services Capital Vehicle Fund for this fiscal year to replace this excavator. Just a little background on the district's excavators. We have a total of 7 excavators that range in size throughout our fleet. 2 excavators are assigned to the watershed maintenance crews, and the other 5 are assigned or used by system maintenance and special projects crews. These are vital pieces of equipment that are used for completing a wide range of system and watershed maintenance tasks. The excavator being replaced is primarily used for vegetation management and road maintenance related activities throughout watershed lands and is the largest in our fleet. The excavator being replaced is rated at Tier 2 for emissions, and the new excavator is rated at Tier 4 final, which currently meets the highest emission standard for off-road diesel-powered equipment. This will improve our fleet average rate for off-road diesel equipment emissions and assist in maintaining compliance with the California Air Resources Board. This excavator is available for purchasing using a California Multiple Awards Schedule Agreement or CMAS agreement. The CMAS agreement is based upon a Federal General Services Administration GSA schedule that was previously bid and awarded. Staff is familiar with and has used CMAS for purchasing heavy equipment in the past. Staff is requesting referral to the board with the Finance Committee's recommendation to authorize the general manager to proceed with the purchase of one Caterpillar 315F excavator for $218,217.26 from Peterson Tractor Incorporated under CMAS agreement, and authorize the general manager to proceed with the sale of VE 379, a 2005 Cat 314 excavator at public auction.
Okay.
I have a request.
Yeah.
The next time you do this, could you please put the hours for the machine in the staff report?
Sure.
Because that was going to be my first question, which you answered, fortunately.
What was the number again on hours?
4,600.
Over 4,600, yeah.
4,600, yeah.
So it had a good long life.
Is it causing maintenance issues, this machine?
It is. Maintenance costs actually from, in the first 8 years, Maintenance costs averaged about $5.84, and then from after the first 8 years, I think it was 2000. Anyways, after the first 8 years, maintenance costs actually went up about 511%.
Oh, wow.
That's per hour, 584 per hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And now 315 is still pretty small. I mean, in the
Yeah, for industry
excavator
standards,
business.
I mean, for us, it's our largest excavator, but by industry standards, it's considered a small excavator.
You don't want a 335 or 45 or?
So does this have the capability of the mulching head that we see out in the
We
watershed?
are actually going to purchase a new mulching head through a different vendor. It should arrive at the same time that we get the new machine, if it moves forward. And Peterson Cat will be setting up the new machine to accommodate the new mulching.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what it can do.
This is kind of a backhoe on steroids. I mean, it's sort of it's pretty small to be called an excavator, right? It's an excavator, but
an
it's
excavator.
pretty small.
Yeah, it's on tracks rather than rubber tire, but yeah. And
The
it
other
will-
question I had is, are we using clean diesel? I thought we
are-
had
we're
switched.
using renewable diesel, RD99. We started
So
that, I want to
that's-
say, in 2017.
That's good. That's good.
When we make an expenditure like this, does this get set in the watershed category? Is this characterized as a watershed expense?
This comes out of the auto shop budget,
Okay.
like capital vehicle.
It'll be used in the watershed, I understand, but there was a cartoon in the IJ within the last few days that I'll assume everybody saw, that was commenting on North Marin raising their water rates. And the point of the cartoon was they're still cheaper than South Marin, i.e. us. Obviously, that it's a myth, quite frankly, as we all have endured for a while. And the reason for the disparity is our 22,000-acre watershed. So it seems to me to make that point, at least in a public communicative sense, expenses like this should be shown as it's a watershed. I mean,
Or perhaps we should state that it's due to the fee that they charge to wheel the water through their pipe that costs nothing to them, that we pay them. Maybe that's the difference in our fees, is we have to pay them.
And could I just bring up one other thing, is now that we got the watershed fee kicking in, maybe to think, and it's, you're going to have to see what the capacity of the new machine is and everything, but if we really want to start attacking some of this vegetation, maybe we need to get another one, assuming we have the operators on staff to make use of them.
Well, we have 7 of them now.
Yeah, we should be increasing the amount of vegetation, though, that we're attacking with these mulching heads. The mulching head I think, can take up to a 4-inch stem, so it's amazing what it can do, how much it can clear.
And then real quick, just to circle back to your initial request regarding the hours, I do have it in the staff report. It's in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought I'd put it in
On the
there.
back page.
Yeah, it's in
See, I
background.
only got to the front page.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. 40. You're right. Thank you.
Okay,
My
so
mistake.
do we have a recommendation to move this forward to the
I'll
board?
make a recommendation.
Second.
Looks like we do. We're all good. I believe we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.